Okay, so for this video, we're going to be installing the 1JZ head onto the 2JZ block. So if you guys have any questions as for what gasket and all that stuff to use, refer to my last videos when I put everything together for the bottom end, and you'll have all the information you need there. First things first, when you put the cylinder head on, you need to make sure you engage the dowel pins so you have no play, everything's lined up as it should be. Next thing, when you have ARP head studs, you need to install the washers into the holes before you put the studs through it, because what happens is the washer is a big diameter and it doesn't fit if you put it flat through this hole. So basically the stud will force it to have to go flat and it won't clear. So put the washers in first and then put the studs through there. Let's do this. So now that all the washers are in, we're going to install these studs. They have an Allen on the head. So for this stud, I'm going to put some thread locker on the threads that go into the block, so that way I have no issues of the actual stud itself backing out of the block. So we're using medium strength thread locker. So we're just going to put a little dab on the bottom there. That way it's going to spread the whole way up. So we're going to stick this in the hole there. Get it started. Just going to slowly drive it in with the impact. We're just going to repeat this all the way until we're done with the cylinder head. Okay, so all the head studs are in and bottomed out. So now the next thing to do is install the actual nuts. When you install the nuts, you are going to want to have these lubricated. So what I did was, instead of using a little lubricant that comes with the actual pack of head studs themselves, I went and bought the whole little jar of ARP lube. I'm going to put some on the studs and on the washers. When you put the lubricant on it, you're going to want to put it on the face of the actual nut itself and on the threads. This will create a smooth torque, so that way you don't have any resistance from friction caused by metal to metal. Whenever you're using torque values and all that stuff, you're going to want to make sure you're using the right, like a scenario. So some of the torque values that are shown are dry torques, meaning that they don't use any sort of lubricant on the hardware. So if you put a lubricant on there, you're going to basically risk the chance of over torquing something, because it was supposed to be torqued dry to, let's say, 20 foot-pounds, but with lubricant on there, it gives it a possibility of going up to like 30, 40 foot-pounds, and that's probably an exaggeration, but if everything needs to be exact, it needs to be exact. The ARP specifies that this has to be wet, so that's why we're doing this. So next would be to tighten the actual hardware. This socket is I can't remember exactly what it was. I think it's a 9/16 or ½ inch, something along those lines. I had to grind it down because what happens is this diameter is way too tight. Just enough to put a socket in there. I had to buy the socket and I had to grind it down. The way I did that is I put a 3/8 impact on this side. I spun it with a 3/8 impact, and I took a angle grinder with a flapper wheel, and I just sat there and ran it up and down. So that progressively took out the basically overall thickness of the socket. That way I can actually stick it where it needs to go. So all the nuts are now drawn down. They're not torqued at all. They're just sitting close enough so I can start to torque. There's a torque sequence for the head. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use a Sharpie, and the way I like to do it is I will mark basically, so if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I will mark it that way. So use the torquing procedure supplied by ARP. I think it's 30, 60, 90 foot-pounds if I recall. I'm gonna have to double check, but you progressively go. So it'll be on the first pass 30 all the way around, 60, and then 90. So let me double check that and then we'll get started. So I started with the 30 foot-pounds and I'm going up to the 60 foot-pounds and ending with 80 foot-pounds, not 90. So 30, 60, 80 is what I'm going to do for this whole torque sequence. So here we go. So after the head is torqued, I kind of got ahead of myself and I didn't get to record this part, but install the camshaft. I put some assembly lube on the actual shims themselves, where the cam actually makes contact. Torqued everything down to specification. This is a non-interference engine, so basically the valves going down won't ever hit the piston if the belt breaks. So this allows me to rotate and check the clearances. Here is a feeler gauge set. The intake side goes from 6 thousandths to 10 thousandths. So we're going to pull a 6 thousandths feeler gauge. We have 10, we have 6. So we're going to set these two aside. So basically 6 thousandths should fit in between the cam and the shim itself. So you should be able to slide in. I'm having a hard time doing this with one hand. 6 should slide in. And it does. You can see it slide in there. So it's sliding underneath the cam on the shim. So it's sliding in. And 10 thousandths over here, wherever it is, 10 thousandths should not fit through the cam and the shim without forcing it. So it doesn't go, it stops, and it doesn't go. So you do that for each cam lobe location. I've already done it for this head, so it's all good. If there is any issue, if it's too tight or if it's too loose, if it's too loose, you need to buy a bigger shim. The shim is this piece here, the chrome piece. Then the bucket, it stays the same. The shim, they have different thicknesses. You can buy the shims through Toyota, I believe. Hopefully I don't have to do any of that. Hopefully everything's within limits. So I'm going to put the exhaust cam on now, get everything to top dead center, install the timing belt. We'll keep going from there. When you put this down, when the cam down, you just kind of progressively have to tighten them and make sure that you set the cam down, because one of the lobes are going to be contacting the valves. So it'll be, you know, spring loaded up. So you just have to walk it down. Next is torquing the caps to the proper torque. Okay, so we looked up the cam torque, the cam cap torque. So it's 14 foot-pounds. 14 foot-pounds times 12, because we have a torque wrench that's an inch-pound. So 14 times 12 is 168. So we're going to get our torque wrench and set it over to 168. If you've never used the torque wrench before, I suggest you look it up. They're super useful for everything. So what we're doing is working from the center out. I'm not torqued yet, but I'm just progressively tightening them some more to make sure I don't have any anything being tightened down before everything else is kind of at the same spot. We're going to torque this one. You'll see the torque wrench break there. Okay. Torque. According to this here, the exhaust side calls for 8 thousandths to 12 thousandths. Going to do the same thing that we did on the intake side. Stick 8 thousandths, and you should be able to stick it through. So here we go. We have that. We have that there. Okay, that lobe is up. So that one's clearing. This one's clearing. Now we're going to grab the 12 thousandths. And the 12 thousandths shouldn't clear in the same spots that we were just in. So 12 thousandths will not pass here. Not pass here. And then it was this one. So it's not passing. Now we just need to rotate the cam so we can get the other lobes in the position where we can actually measure properly. So now that that's installed, now it's time for the water pump assembly to go on. We have the O-ring installed on the back of the pump itself that goes to the block. Water pump in place, and get all the hardware started. Okay, so we're going to slowly tighten that. We're going to use our torque sealer to indicate that all the bolts are torqued, and basically mark all the bolts that I tightened. That way, if anything ever comes loose, I can see it. Now, it's unlikely that it will come loose, but this also gives me a second insurance that I tightened something. So doing this will definitely give me a clear indication that I have tightened this, and Now I don't have to worry about it. Okay, so the next thing is to put the timing belts on. I have the Gates timing belt. It's kind of dirty looking, but it's got like 0 miles on it. Timing marks are still aligned. We have a timing mark on the trigger wheel, and we have 2 timing marks on the cams themselves on the very top to the back cover. So with that being said, this seems to be okay. This is okay up top. Takes the washer on the back. And then goes into place. So these half moons go on the back of the cylinder head. They take sealant to seal the lower half of it, and then the valve cover rides on the top of it. So what we're going to do is make sure everything back here is clean, and clean this up, put some new sealant on there, squeeze it into place, and then start to put the valve cover on. There's really not much left to do, just a couple accessories, and we will be back up on our feet, ready to party again. It's been a while since I've driven. I honestly miss it a lot. My absolute favorite thing to do, driving. Now we're just drawing in the harmonic balancer, so we're going to torque that afterwards to German specifications. Now we should put these cam sensors in. The back one is basically going to be used as a plug, and the middle one is going to be used as the primary. Brake cleaner. Only cancerous in the state of California. Everywhere else you're fine. Since this one looks a little bit hurt, we're just going to set this one in the back because we are not going to use the sensor in the back. And so this sensor is good, so we're going to set this one up front. We're going to set our iridium plugs back in. These have literally like 2 miles on them. I've already pre-gapped them. Right now I'm just making sure they don't have any oil contaminants on it. Just gonna tighten them. So now we install the coil packs. So this is LS truck coil packs. They come out of the LS engines in the trucks. So there's a kit. So this kit will come with the spring. It'll come with the bracket over here, and it will come with the boot. Just basically line it up, push it into place, and you're good. Now this isn't going to fit off the bat because you have to modify your head, and if you haven't done that, watch another one of my videos. I forget which one it is. I think it's a disassembly or getting ready for the engine. That will have everything that you need to do to run these coil packs. Next, we're going to put on the oil sandwich plate. The oil sandwich plate is what's used to basically run an external oil cooler. Just going to make sure everything is tight down here. Given that this is the engine oil supply, you do not want to have any sort of possibility for this to leak. So here's my oil supply for my turbo. I'm taking it off the feed for the VVTi. It's banjo style. I believe it's a 6AN to a 3AN line. So oil feed line for the turbo is on. So as I'm going to go put the water neck on, I realize that the threads on the head are messed up. So this head came off of another engine that I used to have. I bought it off of some guy in Miami for like $600 because it had no compression on 5 and 6. So I have to now do what's called a helicoil, which this kit you can buy at Advance or AutoZone or any automotive store pretty much. You're going to drill and remove all of the old threads. Then after that's done, you're going to use this tap. With this tap, you're going to lubricate and go in and out various times to basically start a new thread for what's called the helicoil to go in place. So the helicoil has a thread on the outside, which is basically the size of this tap here. So you're going to thread this hole with a bigger thread. Use this, which is basically going to act as a reducer, so you can now have the same size threads as before. So they have various different sizes. They have from 6mm, 8mm, and different thread pitches and whatnot. So this is the item that will definitely save you from having to go and buy a new head or anything that might be stripped. This will save you pretty much. So what we're going to do now is flush the metal shavings out of the actual head itself. This is called a tang on the end of it. This tool is for installing the actual helicoil itself, and you're basically putting it where the threads are. So here we go, new threads built onto the head. Here is the bolt. So this should thread in just fine now. We've got a little bit of an angle, but that's fine. Okay, so the helicoil is installed. Now it's time to install the water neck again. For those of you building a 1.5 JZ, if you didn't know, this piece actually is longer than the stock 2J water pipe. Why? I'm not sure. I guess it's the combination of the water neck and the water pump. But just keep in mind that you might have to have a longer custom water piece, water neck for the transfer pipe that goes here. So now we have some good threads for the second bolt to go on. So now with the new threads, you can actually tighten the actual water neck. So hooray! Next comes the oil return for the turbo. We're just gonna put some sealant here. This takes a gasket, but I don't have it, so RTV it is. This is the engine. So we pretty much have it all together now. All the accessories are mounted, and I'm going to go back to the original ways with the swirl pot and the electric water pump. All I have to do is get a 3/4 inch hose and hook that up there. So I kind of took advantage of the engine being out and wrapped what I could on the header itself. There's some missing spots, but whatever. It's better than it was before. All I have to do now is wait for the turbo from Havoc Speed Shop. They're rebuilding it for me. So what I'm gonna do for this video is I'm gonna mount it, basically get ready to put the engine in the actual chassis itself. And then after that, I just need to finish up the wiring for the sprayer system that I'm gonna be running. I can't really get to the passenger side because I have a table in the way, but once the car is on the ground and everything else, I'll situate that. Let's hook up the transmission to this bad boy here. Engine off the stand, we installed the flywheel, and now it's time to install the pressure plate. So I don't know if you guys have seen my removal video of the engine. I had the whole concept wrong. So I thought that the pressure plate had to be unbolted with the transmission. It doesn't. You can actually remove the transmission before you remove the clutch itself by removing the actual throwout fork. So, silly me. So everything's pretty much ready to go in. Just waiting for the turbo, but that can be installed afterwards. So we're going to go ahead and put this engine inside of the engine bay. So that way we look a little bit more complete. One thing I'm going to do before I install the engine is I'm going to put this skid plate in place, bolt it down, weld the nuts to the actual cross piece there, so I can remove the hardware as I desire, because once I put that skid plate on, you can't get to the hardware. First, we're going to clean the metal that goes in the area here. Make sure we have a bare surface to weld to. Nice and clean there. So we're going to do that for all three of them. So these are the three mounting points that are going to go on the actual skid plate itself. So present the hardware. I'm going to be using some nylon locking nuts. I'm pretty sure once I put some spot welds on this, the nylon's gonna melt, but we'll try and avoid that. So now all I have to do is spot weld these nuts.
These nuts? Got him!
So that way I can loosen and tighten them as I need without having to actually get to them. Okay, so the nylon is gone, and that's a given. I figured that, but whatever. Take off my welding mask, drop everything in the process. Okay, so now we can install the plate. Skid plate is on. That should protect my engine from anything that could hit the oil pan on the road. And we're pretty much ready to put the engine in, so I'm gonna go ahead and plop it in the hole. Get it? Plop it in the hole. Anyways, yeah, gonna go into the hole. I stopped over by Havoc Speed Shop and picked up my turbo that's been rebuilt by them. They changed all the seals, they changed the compressor wheel, and they cleaned it all up. Good to go. After I put it on the engine, a little bit of buttoning up left to do from the installation of the engine that I haven't done. So I'm going to go ahead and grab some food. We're going to go home, put the turbo on the car. We're going to tighten everything down, safety wire the hardware. I'm going to go basically make a little Instagram post for safety wiring so people understand the concept of safety wiring and what it is. The car might run today. I want to basically prime the engine with oil, make sure it's good. If you remember on the assembly video, I poured oil directly into the oil pump so that way it has oil available to create the suction, because these pumps don't really work dry. They have to have some sort of fluid in there for it to actually create the suction. So, oh my god, this person is not moving. What are you doing? Okay. So anyways, I want the car to be as loud as possible in the sense that it grabs people's attention. The whole purpose of this deal is to spread awareness of cystic fibrosis and to grow as a driver, expand my connections, you know, speak to different people and get different opportunities in life that I would love to have happen. So the more I stand out, the more opportunities I might have. We're gonna go over to the house, put the turbo on, and get stuff done. I was having an issue with my trigger. The home basically wasn't reading, so I think I might have fixed it, I'm not sure. I messed with the connections, so now I'm going to re-enable the injectors, going to reset the ECU. And so now let's see. So we're reading no home still. 3 trigger system errors. It's a little weird. Okay, so we're gonna give this another shot. This is like my 4th try. I've been having issues with the trigger system. It seems to not be reading the crank sensor. I've had this issue before. I messed with the Canon plug and it ended up fixing it, so I don't really know what to do, but hope for the best. Yeah, so we're reading no home still. I might just stop here for now. Deal with this tomorrow. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So I don't see any issues on my trigger system anymore. So I re-enabled the fuel, and let's see if it works. this is stupid. We have oil pressure. We have a slight misfire, so it's probably one of the coil packs not making good contact. Cool! So meanwhile, I thought I had a misfire due to the coil packs. This is why I love the Haltech. It tells you that it's got an open circuit on cylinder number 6. So now that that's cleared and it's connected again, now let's see how smooth it is. Okay. We're looking good. Oil pressure 60. We are good. All right. I can't breathe.